Hey, it's Marissa Moon, and I've got a special announcement for you. No matter where you live in the world, you could take advantage of this. When you're transforming your health and you're on a mission, you might be wondering, what kind of habits do you need to put into place? And how do you take small, actionable steps that massively up-level your nutrition and your fitness and your self-care and your mindset? Well, Habits to Thrive is a new online summit that will last 5 days plus 2 encore days, and it's hosted by Deanna Wilcox and Anya Perry, plus 17 more Primal Health coaches just like me who are passionate about helping you take your health to the next level. I'm doing a talk on how carb moderation can help free you from endless dieting, and I can't wait for you to check it out. This summit is for you if you're determined to create permanent habits across all areas of your health without the overwhelm and the chronic setbacks. In addition to the daily videos, participants will receive numerous free resources and entries to some incredible giveaways. Did I mention the whole thing is free? And it's all online. So join us on May 6th through May 12th, 2019 by registering at bit.ly/habits to thrive. That's bit.ly/habits to thrive. Talk soon. You're listening to The Foundation of Wellness, a refreshing take on diet and lifestyle, with Jessica Dogert, a registered dietitian nutritionist, and Marissa Moon, a Primal Health Coach.
Hi you guys, my name is Jessica and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist, and you can learn all about me on my website at jessicadogert.com.
What's up, you guys? My name is Marissa Moon. I'm a certified Primal Health Coach and intermittent fasting instructor, and you can learn more about me at marissamoon.com. Today is a big day, you guys.
It's a huge day.
Yeah. We are super excited because we have somehow wrangled in Mark Sisson. Mark Sisson is one of my biggest mentors. He founded the Primal Health Coach Institute, and he has written so many groundbreaking books in the field of ancestral health. Probably my favorite, by the way, is called Primal Connection. And that's one that doesn't get enough attention, if you ask me, and it has the potential to transform lives, which is why I send it to many of my new clients. But Mark also wrote the Primal Blueprint, which is changing thousands of lives every day, hands down his most popular book. And the follow-up to that is the 21-Day Total Body Transformation. And then Keto Reset Diet just came out, and the Keto Reset Diet Cookbook. And let's not forget Primal Endurance, which I think is so critically important for any of my endurance runners or chronic cardio-loving friends. I want them to have that book. So welcome to the show, Mark. I haven't said enough about you even. You founded Primal Kitchen Foods too. You are incredible.
Thank you. Well, and thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, so my first question for you, I hear that you have a very interesting story. You used to be this athlete, endurance runner, but now you're very focused on ancestral health. Can you give us a background of your story?
Sure. We started looking into health and fitness and longevity at like the age of 12 or 13, like a geeky, nerdy kid who what's a kid thinking about longevity at that age? Started reading books on it, and there weren't many, by the way. I ran to school because it was economical for me. I could literally get to school in quicker than waiting for the bus and taking the bus, and I could certainly get home from school faster if I ran. So I started, jogging to and from school, and in concert with the reading that I was doing, I started to hear from the conventional wisdom that aerobic activity was good for you, good for your heart. And so the more you ran, the better it was for you, the longer you'd live. I was all about that. The healthier you would be. And then I started reading books on how to, like the diet, how to eat right to fuel all those miles. And of course, in that day, it was complex carbohydrates. Actually, that day it was like any kind of carbohydrates. It really is like anything. They assumed that the engine would burn anything, right? So over the years, I got running a lot of miles. I started competing. I started getting pretty good, actually quite good at endurance events, from the mile up to the 2 mile, 5K, 10K, then the marathon. finished fifth in the U.S. National Championships in 1980 in the marathon, and then went on later to finish fourth at Ironman in Hawaii. But all this time, I'm getting faster and faster, and my performance is improving, but my health is deteriorating. So I have osteoarthritis in my feet. I have tendonitis in my hips. I have irritable bowel syndrome from the age of 14 to the age of 47. I have all these like weird maladies that I shouldn't have. I'm the kid who wanted to like do everything right and find all the answers to longevity and health and fitness and all these things that we all say we want. So there was this real kind of weird dichotomy here. On the one hand, I'm on the cover of Runner's World magazine 3 times because I represent the fitness, sort of character. And on the other hand, I'm falling apart on the inside. I'm literally dying on the inside with all these things that are taking me down. So eventually I had to stop training at a high level. I just couldn't, my injuries I wouldn't recover from them. The inflammation got worse and worse. The IBS got worse and worse. And it's like, what the hell's going on here? So I stopped competing. I stopped that high-level training, and I just pivoted. And I thought, what's it going to take to be strong, lean, fit, happy, healthy, productive, all those things that we say we want? And that's what started this whole journey that I've taken on in the last, it's 35 years now, about researching ways in which we can improve health through dietary interventions and through the appropriate use of exercise and sleep and sun exposure and play and using our brains and all of those things that I write about in the Primal Connection. Exactly. It's my favorite book too, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's for whatever reason it didn't appeal to the masses yet. Yeah. So all of this research that I was doing sort of got morphed into a blog I started in 2006 called Mark's Daily Apple, and it was my way of espousing my beliefs in how we could all achieve a level of health and fitness that we didn't think was possible. Certainly wasn't possible under the standard American diet and under the conventional wisdom of the medical system. So Mark's Daily Apple as a blog took off. It became the leading sort of go-to resource in the ancestral health world. From there I wrote the Primal Blueprint because it was just my way of taking all the blog posts that I'd written about in various areas of health and fitness and diet and exercise and medicine, putting them all together in a readable format that people could understand. And from there, the brand has kind of taken off.
Speaking of intense endurance, excessive working out and running, you've been there, you've done that. It obviously didn't work out for you. So what would you say to our listeners is the best form of exercise right now?
I would say the best form of exercise is what I call the minimum effective dose. So that's how I lead my own life now. It's like, what's the least amount of stress I can put on my body which will still prompt a response that is positive? In the old days, that stress was layered and layered and layered and extended over one day to the next, to the next, to the next. No rest, lots of miles, lots of training, a diminution of recovery time, so I didn't allow myself time to recover. And I got faster, but again, that was part of what tore me down as an athlete. Everybody thinks when you're an athlete that more is better, no pain, no gain, all that stuff. So now it's like, okay, what's how can I be? I mean, my mantra is basically I want to be strong, lean, fit, happy, healthy, productive with the least amount of pain, suffering, sacrifice, discipline, calorie counting, portion control,
yes.
And all that stuff that we tend to associate with, it's just so difficult to be fit and healthy and all these things. I like, my whole goal is to show people how easy it is. And part of that is the understanding that exercise is necessary, but we can way overdo the exercise portion and then, get frustrated because we're doing all that work and it's all valuable time and then get no results. Exactly.
It makes me think of how easy it is to get injured too, which is something that's frustrating when you're trying so hard and you're pushing yourself to keep it up. And then all of a sudden you have to stop because of an injury that you didn't even see coming, something stupid like you pull your hamstring. And you hopefully realize something about your workouts has to change to prevent that next time.
Well, and if you look at our ancestral history, an injury, 100,000 years ago was basically a death sentence if you didn't recover quickly or, if you didn't know how to overcome that. And so a pulled hamstring could take you out of life, right? So, but what we're finding is that because of the lifestyle, not just the food, but the movement patterns of our ancestors, there was not this. We weren't prone to pull a hamstring. There was a balance in the body, because a hamstring pull is just an example of a biomechanical imbalance, something you're doing too much of one thing and not enough of another, right? So that's one of the things I look at is, like for me, after all those years of endurance training and grunting and groaning and straining and like sweating it out and not having much fun doing it, but doing it because I thought it was good for me. Now I look for play. I look for opportunities to play. So now, like my best workout I do every week is an ultimate Frisbee game. I play with 20-somethings and 30-somethings. Or I do stand-up paddling, or I go, I go snowboarding. Those are all fun. Those are all play for me, and they're great workouts. But while I'm doing them, I don't think, oh shit, when's it going to be over? I think, oh dang, I got to get back. I got a meeting. I have to get back. So that's the difference. And then the time I spend in the gym now is contemplated to just decrease my risk of injury while I'm playing. So I use the play as the major workout, and then the time in the gym as just sort of fine-tuning the pieces.
Do you have any special recovery hacks in case you do get hurt?
Yeah, I mean, what I do is, when I started doing triathlons, that was the original cross training. So I started doing triathlons because I couldn't run anymore. I went from running 120 miles a week to not being able to run 30 miles a week without, tremendous pain. But I still had this Jones. I still had to go, do something. I had to get that endorphin rush, right? And so I shifted to triathlon because I could ride a bike without pain. So I could take the energy that I wanted to put into running, put it into cycling, and then, by the way, I could get off the bike, and because I was warmed up, I could actually run a little bit more efficiently having ridden a bike first. And of course, swimming is another form of cross-training. So what I look at now is if I do get injured, like I'm injured right now. I tore my plantar plate in the bottom of my foot playing Frisbee and playing Ultimate. And it was like 2 days in a row. I moved to Miami Beach, and there's so many games there, so I played on a Sunday afternoon and then played on a Monday night on a hard surface. And I should have given myself time to recover because it's a stressful, like I say, it's a lot of fun and it's stressful on the body. So anyway, so what I do is I work around it. I do whatever I can up to the point of pain. So I will cross train. I'll do other things. I can certainly paddle while I'm with a foot that's still recovering. I can paddle fine, so I'll go out and do a extra paddle session during the week. So I don't look at injuries as this forced, like, I got to lie home and watch TV in bed. I look at it as, okay, that's that's the universe telling me that I had a biomechanical issue that I wasn't paying attention to, or I wasn't allowing myself enough rest and recovery from these intentionally hard workouts that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And so now it's an opportunity to look at that, to maybe do a little bit extra stretching, and to find other modalities, and then to do what I was doing, but only up to the point of pain. So I can still run a little bit. So even with my foot kind of in its recovery phase, and I usually play in Vibram 5 fingers, because I like the barefoot thing. Now I actually bought some cleats. First time in my life I've ever owned athletic cleats, but they're stiff. The sole is stiff, so I can't bend the part that's trying to recover now. So I can still play while it's recovering. Obviously, I have to dial it back a little bit, but anyway. So that's I don't want to stop doing something entirely just because I got injured. I just look at this as an opportunity to kind of do it, to take another approach.
I want to talk to two segments of our audience right now, because there are people who are working out all the time, trying really hard to reach their fitness goals, right? They're probably, if they're super dedicated, they're working out like 6 to 7 days a week because they feel that that's really the only way they're going to reach their goals or stay in shape. And then there's the other group who's just living their life day to day and feeling like they have no time to exercise, and they don't even know where to start. And both of those groups can learn from the advice you've been giving And there were some very important points that you mentioned. Like, number one, rest days are something you always teach your health coaches and your followers, Mark, to take, because that's when you're going to get those gains, when you're resting. And number two, for people who aren't even exercising right now, when we talk about injuries, it can happen when you're not exercising at all and you just bend over to pick something up on your bedroom floor, right? And you throw your back out. And so when you talk about full body movement or functional exercise, that's kind of a new concept to a lot of people. It can be something as simple as reaching your arms above your head, right? Since your shoulders don't usually get that mobility in your daily life. So walk us through like a few of the basics you wish people had in their sedentary life and that you wish people had in their active life.
Well, first thing is walking. I mean, we're bipedal creatures. We're supposed to be walking, and we don't.
Walking is my favorite exercise.
And it should be everyone's favorite exercise. It should be everyone's go-to exercise, no matter what your condition is. Unless you're bedridden, you should get out there and move. And when I talk about the primal, exercise pyramid, at the foundation is move around a lot at a low level of aerobic activity. Could be walking, could be hiking, could be crawling, could be easy bike riding, whatever. Find a way to move through space, and that also includes the different planes of space. So that's why Tai Chi, Qigong, and some of these other martial art sort of disciplines that older people in Asia can do. You see them out there doing all these interesting, but they're going through huge planes of motion because mobility is a critical component here. It's not burning calories. You don't think about, or I don't want people to think about burning calories when they're exercising. I want them to think about the movement and what the movement is doing, whether it's just increasing range of motion, right, mobility, or whether it's deadlifting in the gym and not only improving strength, core strength, glute, hamstring, but it's also improving blood sugar disposal. There are a lot of components to exercise that don't necessarily have anything to do with weight loss, but have more to do with good health and achieving good health and maintaining good health and good balance. As we look at going back to my 12-year-old self and the whole concept of longevity at that age, the two things for me that define longevity are mobility, the ability to move through this world and get from one place to the other, and then access to memory, cognition. So those are the two major, to me, they define quality of life. And what happens with mobility is over time we tend to seize up a little bit. We tend to be constricted. We tend to lose that range of motion and that mobility. So walking is great. In my Primal Blueprint exercise strategy, lifting weights, lifting heavy things twice a week is all you need to do. And then sprinting once a week. Now, sprinting is an interesting concept because people would say, well, wait, I'm not a sprinter. I don't know how to run on the track. And you don't have to do it. Sprinting is basically going a max effort all out for anywhere from 8 seconds to 20 or 30 seconds, and then taking a 2-minute rest and then doing it again, and doing this a couple of times during one workout, one time a week, maybe once every 10 days. But it sort of mimics the ancestral pattern, which was our genes, this recipe that we have inside of us that wants us to be strong, lean, fit, happy, healthy, productive. It needs certain inputs. And the inputs that it expects are the inputs that for millions of years are what define human behavior. So that movement pattern would be lots of walking around. There were no chairs and sofas. And then, by the way, the archetypal rest postures. So we talk about, because we didn't have chairs, if we weren't walking, we were kneeling low, kneeling high, side-sitting, sitting, cross-legged. These are all automatic. They stretch ligaments and tendons and connective tissue, and then that's one of the ways that we support ourselves from getting injured when we're doing the activity. So even the rest phase of our ancestral behavior was contemplated to improve our health, improve our blood sugar transport, all of these things sort of come together, and we've lost that. So move around a lot at a low level of activity, lift weights twice a week, and then once a week sprint. Now, sprinting for some people could be going to the track, could be on the elliptical machine in the gym, could be on a bike, could be in a swimming pool, could be on a VersaClimber. There are lots of ways in which we can go all out and raise our heart rate and our effort level up to 100% of max, because ancestrally, once a week, once in a while, we would have to run for our lives from something, right? And it wasn't like we warmed up for it. We didn't just give me 10. All right, Mr. Saber-toothed Tiger, give me 10 minutes while I warm up before I hit the gas here. So all of the archetypal rest postures were preparing us, had us already limber for if we had to jump up and then run away. Now, the effect of that on our sympathetic nervous system and eventually parasympathetic nervous system was, a burst of adrenaline, some cortisol, a pulsive growth hormone, testosterone, all these things which would basically over time improve our ability. If we escaped, if we did live, we got better, we got stronger. That old Nietzsche, thing, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Yeah. A lot of truth to that. So that was the concept, was we got a little bit better every time we were forced to do this sort of activity, right? So we now have to because we don't live near a saber-toothed tiger or any sort of, marauding village that's going to, invade, we have to invent ways in which we can emulate this hunter-gatherer experience and this expectation that our genes have of us. Our genes want us to be scared, out of our wits once in a while. It's actually a positive hormetic response. Where it gets problematic is when we are under a lot of stress, constant stress, and we're worried about this, and we create the stress. That becomes, a chronic stressful condition, which is what we don't want to have.
Two things. I really loved how you mentioned, why should we be exercising? It's not to burn calories. It's to enhance mobility and strength and to feel really good. And another thing you mentioned was, what is it that leads to quality of life? And you focus on two things, mobility and memory. I love that.
Some things that come to mind while you're talking is the whole rest day concept. How often should people be taking rest days, and why is it important?
Well, as you said, it isn't the workout that causes an improvement in strength or power or fat burning. It's the effect of the workout once the body has had time to rebuild, repair, recover, regenerate, and then it's the signals that the workout gives the body that says, we have to make a little bit more muscle tissue. We have to maybe have more mitochondria to handle the throughput of energy requirements. So it's the rest that actually where all of that positive benefit takes place. And if you don't allow yourself rest, then you become this accrual of stress and damage over time. And that's what happens to a lot of endurance athletes. They train every day and they think because they can do it every day, and because, for instance, they might replenish their glycogen stores because they carbo load every day, every night, and then go out and do it again the next day, and that's where you get into a lot of trouble. So, this idea that there is a minimum effective dose of exercise that will give you, and the other thing I talk about in Primal Endurance is make your long, easy days longer and easier, and then make your hard days harder, more intense and shorter. And where people get stuck is we get into this black hole of training, a no man's land where there's no real benefit. All you're doing is practicing hurting, which I guess has benefit for some people, but at some point you don't get better. And when I was an endurance athlete, I just want to get faster. I wasn't doing this because I loved hurting. I was doing it because I thought I was going to get better. So in Primal Endurance, we talk about, for instance, this notion that, first of all, most of your energy in endurance training ought to come from fat. But for so many people it doesn't, because they haven't trained themselves to be good at burning fat. And how we train ourselves to become burning fat isn't through the exercise, it's through the diet. It's through reconfiguring the eating strategy to withhold glucose, so the body goes, hey, if there's not going to be much glucose, we have to start burning fat. We know how to burn fat. We have all the instructions in the DNA, in the genes. We just haven't ever done it because, you've been feeding me glucose every 4 hours, my whole life, and I just never had to call on my fat stores. So you start by reconfiguring your fuel partitioning it's keto is the reason why I wrote the Keto Reset Diet was to help people create what we call metabolic flexibility, the ability to extract energy from the fat on your plate, the fat on your thighs or hips or belly, the carbohydrate on your plate, the glucose in your muscles, the glycogen in your muscles, the amino acids maybe, even the ketones that your liver's making. If you're metabolically flexible, you can derive energy from all these things. If you're not metabolically flexible, if you haven't built that machinery, then you're dependent on carbohydrate your whole life. And so a lot of people who go to the gym thinking they're going to go to the gym and burn a lot of calories in order to lose their body fat, wind up just burning glycogen out of their muscles because the muscles haven't really built the metabolic machinery to burn fat. And so sure, the LED readout says 450 calories, like great. But then they go home and the brain says you got to replenish the glycogen. You don't know how to burn fat yet. You haven't done the work. So people get into this cycle where they're good at burning sugar, and so they can run their heart rate up to that zone 5 or zone 4 or 5 or whatever, and 80-90% of their max heart rate and stay there for long periods of time. But it's not benefiting them. They're not getting any faster. They're not getting any more efficient with their fuel use. And so what we talk about in Primal Endurance is you start by reconfiguring your diet to encourage your body to burn fat. And then you start your training, your base period is at a level that never exceeds 180 minus your age. So they used to think, 220 minus your age was your max, and then 180 minus your age would be your...
Everybody still thinks that, by the way.
No, I know, it's bizarre. So 180 minus your age has been determined to be kind of that nice little sweet spot where up until that, anywhere from 0 up to that, you're burning mostly fat. Most of your energy is coming from fat. But once you exceed that, then more and more of your energy is coming from glucose, which, again, you can do it. People have done it for decades. I did it for most of my career. But what happens is you're not becoming better at burning fat. You're just becoming hardened to burning more and more sugar, more and more glycogen, more and more glucose, and you're depending on the gels when you get in the race. So 180 minus your age, maximum heart rate, at which point we know you're mostly deriving your energy from fat. And so if you keep most of your workouts, a lot of your workouts in the base building phase at that, then you get more and more efficient at using fat for the work that you do. So it might start out that you're running. If you're a runner, you might be doing, I can run 7-minute miles when I'm doing it my way, and when I do it your way, Mark, I'm running like 11-minute miles before my heart rate gets to that zone, and you're telling me I can't exceed that? And I'm saying, well, yeah, if you want to get better at burning fat, because up to that zone, even if you're running 11-minute miles, it just means that once you exceed that, you're really good at burning sugar. You can run 7-minute miles, but you suck at burning fat. If we're going to train you to burn fat, you have to become more and more efficient. So over time what happens is you keep that max heart rate at 180 minus your age, and then you start running 10-minute miles, and then 9:30s and 9s and 8:30s. And next thing you know, you're running 8.5-minute miles, 8-minute miles at that lower heart rate, so that when you do get into a race, and now you want to put the pedal to the metal, most of your energy is coming from fat, and you're running right next to, the person you're running next to, they're burning mostly sugar, you're going to dust them when push comes to shove. So I'm sorry about the long-winded explanation for that.
Awesome explanation.
But that's the reason for that. And then at the high end, when you do the sprints and do the maximum sustained power work, now you're building actual power, and you combine the fat burning with the power. Now you've got a machine that's going to perform well. What happens is people hang out in that middle zone where their heart rate is too high for them to be burning fat, but too low for them to be developing speed. And so that's called the black hole, because they just hang out there and they never get better. And I talk to people all the time who put 60, 70, 80 miles a week of running, and their best marathon is 3:45, and they run 6 of them a year, and they're all between 3:45 and 3:50 and 3 whatever. And it's like, don't you want to get better? Like, why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. And because if you don't improve doing that, then all you're doing is wearing your body down. And my generation, I come from the 70s where sounds like I'm an alien. I come from the 70s, and where my generation has like tens of thousands of people who overtrained and now are suffering the consequences with their hearts and their joints and knee replacements, hip replacements, things like that.
I'm thinking right now something to introduce our audience to. There are a million reasons why it's better to be a fat burner instead of a glucose burner. And when we say glucose, we're talking about carbs and sugar, really just a standard diet today when you have bread and flour-based foods at every meal and dessert and stuff. But one of the main benefits of switching to fat burning is because you're burning cleaner energy and you're having less reactive oxygen species in the body. It's an anti-aging strategy. So talk a little bit about that.
So guys like Ron Rosedale, Dr. Ron Rosedale, who was one of my mentors, Joe Mercola, myself, probably Rob Wolf now would say the less glucose you burn in your lifetime, the better off you are, right? So we want to try and get away from this dependency on carbohydrates and glucose. Fat burns very cleanly, as you said. It should be the primary fuel for humans. It's interesting that if you look at how we're developed, we have the storage capacity for about 1,500 calories worth of fuel in the carbohydrate stores. So 1,500 calories is not that much. We have the capacity in some people to store 1 million calories of fat. And even on me at 10% body fat, I weigh 170, I got 17 pounds, call it 15 usable pounds of fat. I mean, I can go 450 miles without eating on the fat that I have stored on me. So fat's a very efficient fuel. It's what got us here through evolution. It's what allowed us to survive long periods of not eating. So what happens is, we have this ability to burn fat, but we lose it when we're developing. Our parents give us, mashed peas and sweet potato and bread and rice and cereal and more cereal. Yeah. And we lose this ability. So, but it's there in our DNA. So how fat burns is through mitochondria. So mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. When we don't eat that way and when we're eating a lot of sugar and carbohydrate and glucose, it doesn't need the mitochondria to provide fuel. It can happen in the cytosol, the spaces inside the cell. And there's a lot of reactive oxygen species. Free radical production, that is the cause of aging, would be several theories. Well, if you can confine all of this, or most of this, to the mitochondria, a sort of closed little furnace, if you have more mitochondria and they work more efficiently, then you won't throw off all of this free radical damage and these reactive oxygen species. And theoretically, that's sort of an anti-aging strategy that a lot of people have embarked on. So to the extent that you can teach your body to burn fat efficiently and make ketones, and then the ketones are another wonderful fuel we haven't even talked about, but ketones are a good thing. The brain thrives on ketones. The more ketones you make, the easier it is for the brain to function and not require glucose. So when we talk about people who have low blood sugar and are starting to faint or whatever, that's because the brain hasn't been taught hasn't switched over to learn how to use ketones. All of this is trainable. All of this is stuff that you can do in a matter of weeks if you have the right information with your diet and your exercise strategy.
A lot of the things he's talking about, you guys can learn in his books. So Primal Endurance, if you're interested in improving your endurance training, using the techniques he's talking about and learning how to be a fat burner. And then, of course, the 21-day transition into fat burning for fuel instead is in almost every one of your books. That started in the Primal Blueprint, I think.
It's the central theme. I mean, I first talked about being a fat-burning beast, 15 years ago. And that's really, I don't know how that translates to across generations or even across men to women, but men seem to like it, becoming a fat-burning beast. But it really is about becoming better at burning fat, less dependent on carbohydrate. And then we haven't even talked about all of the benefits that, for instance, more energy, greater cognition. But the single greatest one is control of appetite, hunger, and cravings.
The best. That's our favorite.
So that's the thing that if you become good at burning fat, then your body no longer has to refuel itself every few hours because you've depleted your glycogen stores. And with that, the brain gets comfortable with using ketones, and it's like ironic that in the old days you might go, well, we can't do this podcast at noon because that's lunchtime.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm going to get hangry if and now it's like, oh my God, it's 3:30. I haven't eaten yet today. What? Oh, whatever. And it's 3:30, and I could eat now, but no, then I really want to have a nice dinner. So you know what? I just won't eat until dinner, and it's so easy to do.
Yeah.
And people would say, wait a minute, I love to eat. You know, why? What? You're only going to eat one meal a day or 2 meals a day? I'm like, Jesus, I love to eat too. I love, like, I want every bite of food I put in my mouth to taste awesome, and I love to eat. But the difference is I know what's enough and when I'm finished. And a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people are like I go to the gym, and you know, one of the reasons, you know, people are at the gym, it's like, what are you doing? You're on the treadmill 45 minutes a day, 5-6 days a week. Why are you doing that? Are you training for a marathon? No, I just like to eat. I'm like, what? You'd put yourself through all that misery for a few more bites of something you probably shouldn't have in the first place?
I actually see that all the time. I feel like all of my clients want to work out to burn calories so that they can eat that extra slice of pizza or have that ice cream for dessert, but that's just the totally wrong mentality to have, right?
It's like they want to have, you know, like, I want to build a fast metabolism. Well, wait a minute, fast metabolism is not an anti-aging strategy. I actually want to build, you know, a slower metabolism, but the end result of that is, if I'm not hungry, what does it matter how little I eat, right, or how much I eat? I think people certainly throughout this country, their sort of thing is, okay, what's the most amount of food I can eat and not gain weight? What's the biggest piece of cheesecake I can have and not feel guilty or not feel like crap, right? And it's just bizarre to me that we would think that. But we are wired that way. Okay, so the brain is wired to overeat because historically, millions of years ago, even tens of thousands of years ago, food was not plentiful, so we overate with this amazing system that converts excess calories into stored fuel that we get to carry around on our hips and our ass and our thighs and our belly, right centered over the center of gravity. It's so awesome. It's so awesome that we can do that. But we haven't taught ourselves how to take it out of storage, right? So we're wired to overeat. But so part of the skill here is understanding that food is always available. And so, you know, when I've finished having enough, you know, what is enough? Is a piece of cheesecake this big a serving? Because that's what they gave me. So they must give me permission to eat the whole serving. I won't have two, but I'll have one. And then you go to somebody else's house and they give you a little sliver of cheesecake, and they go, well, that must be what they think is a serving. You know, it's like you have the first bite, it's a 10 out of 10. It's awesome. But then the second bite, that's a 9. You know, by the 6th or 7th bite, it's like, okay, I got it. This is a great cheesecake, but like now I'm just having a contest with myself to see how gluttonous I can be. I don't have to finish the whole thing. So we have to develop that sort of nuanced, intuitive skill to know, I'm not hangry, I'm not even hungry, and so I don't need to. If I'm not hungry, I don't need to eat. Like, that's the coolest thing ever that people just don't realize. I'm not going to go into cannibal mode. You know, I'm not going to tear down my muscle tissue. I'm not going to go off the rails. I'm not going to pass out from low blood sugar because I've become so good at burning fat. I'm so adept at creating ketones and using them in my brain. So all that stuff, when that works beautifully, then your metabolism just sort of sinks into this nice little level. And then when you have a meal, it's not like, oh my God, I'm just going to be ravenous. I'm going to You don't even overeat at a meal. You just eat an appropriate amount of food, and then you're satisfied, which is really what we're all after. We just want to be satisfied. I don't want to, like, how many times have you, like, and people, you know, the world over, you overeat at dinner, and then you go to bed and you regret having eaten that much. You didn't need to eat that much. God damn it! It's like, you know, that was, now I have heartburn, and my heart is racing, and I'm tossing and turning and sweating because my body's trying to burn off the excess It's like, who needs that stuff? So you develop this intuitive skill to not let hunger or appetite or cravings control your life.
Yeah, I really want everyone to know he's not talking about willpower. He's not talking about portion control. What he's talking about is something you really only understand when you start learning to be a fat burner. And that comes with this very simple transformation that sounds scary at first, transition really, I should say, around 21 days, I teach that in my intermittent fasting course, and that again is what is in Mark's books. But I'm bringing it up again because I want you to know that this is not really something that he's coached himself through mentally as much as it is something that he achieved naturally by eating the foods that the body really wants you to eat. Because you're talking about the metabolism, you must have thrown everyone for a loop when you said you wanted like a slower metabolism. And that's an important point to bring up, because when the body becomes more efficient on a metabolic level and it knows how to use the nutrients that are in your cells already, then you don't need food. You're not...
One of the things that we looked at with regard to portions and macros, for instance, and really eye-opening for me, because for the longest time I was a guy who could like 3,200 calories a day, 7,000 calories a day back in the day. But even in my 40s and 50s, it was like I ate 3 meals, 3,200 calories, whatever it was. When I started doing this, and I realized, first of all, 3 meals a day is way too much food. That's just too much food. So I don't eat breakfast. I don't eat until 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock on most days. If I do have my first meal then. Second of all, I get by on like 30% fewer calories than I used to. And like get by, I thrive on it. And I don't lose muscle mass, I don't lose energy, I don't lose any of this. It's just, it sort of happens naturally that one chooses to eat less food and gets, like I say, I think we save the world's problems in terms of feeding the world just by everyone adopting this pattern, feeding off your own fat, number one, and number two, just consuming less food in this country and allocating it to, reallocating it to other people. I mean, that's the real wealth redistribution that ought to happen.
Absolutely. I know we're running short on time, so I want to lead everybody to Mark's Daily Apple. That's marksdailyapple.com, because it's a really valuable newsletter that you can take so much information from that's practical for your daily life, and he answers a lot of your burning questions about health and nutrition today. And you obviously should grab one of his books for sure. Mark, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know you're a busy man, and
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to interview with us. We appreciate you, and we think you're amazing.
Oh, thank you
So much.
You as well. Keep doing what you're doing. Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Oh, yeah, it's almost